I'm quite happy to be here together in Rome to discuss a topic that I've been working on for quite some time. I'd like to thank Colonel Marlino for his vision and for especially the vision that advising as practice, as good practices for advising, span beyond any particular mission set, any particular activity. It is something that overall all our communities actually need to be thinking about in a very similar way. And I'll make some comments, and I think other speakers will also talk about that. I'd also like to recognize and thank Captain Glorioso, who has tirelessly worked for the past year, but definitely the past months to make this happen. None of us would be here, along with your colleagues. None of us would be here. None of us would have even arrived at our hotel without all of the work that you've done and all of the harnessing of the speakers and all of these things. So I think I really deserve a lot of recognition, and hopefully you can meet her during the breaks and chat with her. She's in herself an expert. So, as you know, I've been working on professionalizing advising for many years now, and trying to spread some research findings and some good practices that have now pretty much been established as an international community, to be effective at capacity building and to leave change behind once we work with foreign counterparts. Advising is an important tool. It's a tool that provides assistance to fragile states for the SFA community, but overall to the broader security sector reform community and security sector governance community, which I think we're all part of. Advising is a tool that spans the conflict cycle. It is a capability that is useful for prevention of conflict all the way to reform for stabilization and reconstruction. So therefore it needs to be taken quite seriously, because it is quite a tool that we can, when used correctly and well, can really have significant impact. It allows us to contribute to help countries address their security threats more effectively, and also the security threats of the entire international community. However, there are some issues that still remain for us to realize the full promise of advising as a tool or as a capability. The SFA community and the broader SSR community, the security sector community, need to better understand how to leverage advising effectively on a systematic basis as a community. Of course, in this room there are many people that understand it quite well, but we're just not enough. The message needs to be spread much further for it to have an impact. We also need to understand how to explain the advising effort to the leadership in our own countries and to the leadership in fragile states. That's really important to understand what the promise, of advising can deliver, and what expectations can be set. There's still some work to be done on that. We need also to better understand how to integrate advising into all types of activities, and how, including institution building activities, and how to interface them with train and equip activities and efforts. We also need to differentiate advising from other assistance activities, especially training, and it's a very personal message of mine, and one we've been working with colleagues. Training and advising are different tasks, as you'll hear from some of our speakers, and I think it's very important to distinguish the activities so that we prepare people correctly and with the right tools for the right task. So it's really important to continue working with the policy and the planning communities to enhance their understanding of how to leverage advising programs and what expectations to have and what expectations not to have. It's also important for advising programs to be set up for success, given the resources to support and the knowledge to set up advising efforts to be able to build capacity effectively and sustainably. The resources for these missions come from informed policy decisions, in my opinion, first and foremost. And these policy decisions need to rest on knowledge of what works and what doesn't. This is one of the things that we are trying to accomplish here with the esteemed speakers and colleagues that we have here present, and with you in the audience. So it's important to develop that knowledge and to spread that knowledge. We as a community also need to better understand what attributes and characteristics lead to effective advising to inform tasking, selection, recruitment, and preparation and training of advisors. Many of us, if not all in this room, have worked alongside people who are not necessarily prepared or even fit to work with foreign counterparts, for example. And we need to develop preparation programs, training programs that set up advisors and their mission for success. And we need to really understand what that entails as a community. Again, there's many people in this room that really have good insight on this and have a deep understanding of it. But as a community, that needs to continue to develop. So it's an important effort because building capacity in a more supply-driven approach has failed us when it comes to sustainability and return on investment, and the credibility of the countries that are providing the assistance is also suffering. We have some counterparts, partners that have been socialized in ways that is not very productive to capacity building efforts. And we'll have much greater discussions, deeper conversations with the speakers on that. But there's good news. And the good news is that things have gotten better. I've been looking at this for about 10 years. I've got a lot of data, both of what it takes for advisors to be effective and what types of relationships that our host country counterparts are interested in developing with us. And things have really moved in the right direction. I hope some of you at least agree with this, but I really have seen at least an attitude shift towards what it takes to advise effectively and to build capacity sustainably. We have first and foremost shown a significant change in our attitude vis-a-vis our counterparts, our host country counterparts. It's not across the board yet. Not everyone has it, but we are seeing a shift. And most people at least understand that we need to work with our counterparts in host countries as equals. This is something that we'll talk in much greater detail throughout the day and a half. We know that engaging our counterparts early is key. We know that there is existing capacity. There are systems in place that aren't necessarily as operational as they could be, and which leads to less security provision that would be necessary, but there are systems, and we have learned that we need to figure out how to respect those systems and to build upon them rather than build parallel systems. In some cases, we have stopped underestimating our counterparts, their systems, and their processes, and we're much more careful about building processes that are customized and that can be funded long-term and that can be sustained by their host countries over a longer term. The cynics in the audience will say, well, she's crazy, where is she seeing this? But I think we are seeing this little by little. It just needs to be systematized across the international community much more. But in many cases, because the sheer number of advising activities being planned every day, and because there are still not as much training and preparation, and not as much of the the spreading of the attitude that leads to sustainable capacity building, there's still some work to be done. Our message hasn't gotten out as widely as we'd like yet, and that's what we're going to continue discussing for the next day and a half. But it's difficult. We have to recognize the challenges, the frequent rotations, the background of advisors, the shift from either combat or material solutions to non-material capacity building activities is the shift in mindset that is needed for advisors, and the political climate, among other factors, make advising and sustainable capacity building quite challenging. We need to do more work before advising can deliver on its promise. We need to understand what we can achieve with advising missions and what we cannot. We need to understand who can advise and who cannot. We need to understand and learn how to communicate the tasks and the principles of effective capacity building as a community more effectively. And so that is what we're here to do today and tomorrow morning. The good news continues. We have many of us in this room who have important insights to share with the entire community, and I'm very happy to have been able to bring all of the speakers that we have, the experts in the room, together to share their insights with each other and with all of you. And so that we can sort of move forward and move the field forward a little bit further together, and to build on this knowledge that is necessary for us to do a little bit better. So I'll stop here. You have an agenda in your packet that you've received. What we're going to do is we're going to have speakers come to the podium. They'll each have about a half hour, about 30 minutes to speak. We'll ask the speakers to speak for about 20 minutes and then have a discussion or question and answer session with the speaker or with, with others at the table if you think of a question later after a particular speech. We've asked the speakers to come and share their insights, their reflections, their knowledge that they apply in the work that they do. You'll see some significant, messages that are important that can be shared and can be spread across various programs, various initiatives throughout our community. And so they're all very experienced. They all have very important messages. So I encourage all of us to really think about this material and contribute to it with questions and discussion. Tomorrow, at the end of the morning, we will have a roundtable discussion through which we will all share thoughts, and we will think about what can we do after this meeting that we have here in Rome together, and how can we support and leverage the NATO Center of Excellence for SFA to continue to build that knowledge and that information that we need to further inform how we do advising. So I encourage you to have as many questions, as many comments as possible. I am encouraging all of us to be quite reflective and think about innovative approaches and ask each other critical questions. And when I mean critical, I don't mean from a criticism perspective, but from a constructive perspective, to really have a discussion and really think through the variety of challenges and apply them to some of the insights that are being brought up by the speakers. We believe that's how we are going to move forward. We believe that's how all of us will have greater knowledge that can inform our activities. So at the end of the day, we're trying to help all of us build a community of practice, some sort of community that could be the individuals in this room, but much beyond, and so that this practice of advising can be informed across the entire community. The dream is that advising becomes standardized and all countries and all organizations start to sort of work in a similar manner, because we see that advisors and their activities will really greatly benefit from all working in the same direction, or at least with the same mindset. So I will stop saying any more, because otherwise I'll borrow time and topics from the various speakers who you'll be quite happy to hear from. So with no further ado, I will introduce our first speaker, and after that we'll go to break and we'll have a fresh set of speakers to come up. So I would like to introduce first and foremost Lieutenant Colonel Mario Leal Gouveia. My Portuguese accent isn't that great.
It's our mistake, he's a colonel.
Oh, he's a colonel.
I'm happy. I became 3 years younger. At this stage of my life, being back to 52 again is good.
All right, so things are good there. So he's currently the head of the Republican National Guard of the Portuguese Gendarmerie on training international cooperation. He's the head of the Portuguese CIPOL national unit, and he is leading the CIPOL Knowledge Center on the European Union CSDP missions, coordinating the work on this domain of 13 training institutions from 9 EU member states. He also manages the joint training actions between the Portuguese Gendarmerie and Frontex with the EU. And prior to that, he was the head of operations for the Lisbon region in Portugal, and he served during 4 years in the EU crisis management structures in Brussels. He's worked in missions both within the EU and the UN systems, and currently, just this year, he delivered lectures at the Security and Defense Congress, organized by the Nova University of Lisbon, and at the International Conference EU Global Strategy and CSDP missions organized by the Lusíada University of Lisbon. So thank you and welcome, and let me turn over the podium to you.
Thank you for your kind introduction, Nadia. Franco, grateful for your invitation and for your warm welcome yesterday and also today. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. It's a pleasure being with you today and sharing with you some of my thoughts regarding these issues. The challenge that the organization of this workshop proposed to me regards requirements for planning of advice-driven activities. And thinking on these issues, I think I could identify some key aspects that have to be met when planning this kind of activities, based on my experience, on the doctrine, etc., etc. My agenda, the summary of my presentation. First of all, you are aware already about who I am, but I'm also willing to deliver something from where I came, from my organization, and also a little bit on my objective. And then, went through the bone, straight to the bone of the issue, I will approach these topics regarding what I think is critical aspects to be met when we are planning advice-driving activities. Okay? Ownership of those country, host country absorption capacity, management of time, cultural awareness, coordination with actors present in the host country, identification of material needs from the side of our local counterparts, and the horizontal approach regarding all these aspects that I consider critical within all planning documents for these activities within the framework of an operation, a mission, etc. Well, from where I came from, I'm serving for the last more than 35 years a gendarmerie type force. We are completely military, of course, but we are not from the Portuguese Armed Forces. Okay? We are a full security force with military status. Then we have also the civilian security forces and security service, such as the maritime police, the public security police, and the police services as the judiciary police, the immigration and border service, and the internal intelligence service. And of course, we have the armed forces, the Navy, the Army, and the Air Force. We are military, but a full security force. Saying this in a very practical way, 98% of our dependence is from the Ministry of the Interior, and our dependence from the Ministry of Defense is just 2% for harmonization of the weaponry and military doctrine purposes. Okay, what's my objective? Share with you some aspects that I consider critical when planning advice-driven activities to be performed within crisis management environments, and when our counterparts are not able to perform their tasks regarding law, order, rule of law, and they are completely unable or hampered to do it. First aspect, ownership of those countries. This is key, this is critical to be met both on strategical and operational level when we are planning these kind of activities. Summarizing, my friends, and from my experience, we must always bear in mind that the process is not ours, it's from them. If we are there, it's why, it's because they call us to be there, okay? They are the owners of the process. We are just supporting them, okay? Something that we have also, I consider, critical to be met when planning this kind of activities, it's an accurate idea on the absorption level of our local counterparts. Okay, a story from my operational side in Africa. Several years ago, I was leading a training project towards the Ivorian security forces, the Ivorian police, and the Ivorian gendarmerie, and I was already a major, and I found myself developing a training project which the core business was teaching them how to take care of a car crash accident, okay? Because, look, in fact, it was their level, and we must adapt the content of when we are advising, when we are training, but now the issue is advising, we have to adapt the level of our message to the capability of our counterparts, and of course, supporting them to raise this level. At the same time, we must bear in mind that they have their own professional life to be run at the same time that we are cooperating with them. And they have to rethink during their daily basis life on the solutions we are delivering to them, on the ideas we are delivering to them and to their organizations, okay? This is change. This is change management, and we have to give time to people. But we will approach soon the issue of time when performing this kind of advice-driven activities, and we have to give time to them to absorb and to manage the changes we are proposed to their organizations. Yes, the issue of the time, the management of the time. Of course, when planning these activities, both, and I emphasize, both on strategical and operational level, the management of time is something relevant to be met. We have to give time to them to absorb, adapting the message to the level, because organizations are constituted by people, and you have to give time to them to absorb the message, discussing with them locally relevant solutions, okay, within their own environment. The process is from them, okay? And at the same time, advisors, and this regards also management of time, they also need time to their side to rethink new strategies, how to pass their message, how to achieve their objectives, because sometimes they are fighting against local procedures, local behaviors, and what's behind that. And they must understand that, and they have to find a way to achieve their goals, coping with these problems. But the main issue I want to raise, and the most important in my vision to be met when planning this kind of activities, it's coping the management of time with these difficulties within the time frame, the mandate's time frame, okay? As we know, this kind of activities is expensive. And here, time is really money, and a lot of money, okay? And the contributors for this kind of operations and missions, they are always willing, and we know that very well, they are always willing a fat chicken for little money, okay? And the time accorded, it's within the mandate's time frame, it's usually is short, okay? And how to cope, how to give time to people in the field to perform their tasks, and at the same time satisfy the goals Eh? I'm not jeopardizing your evaluation communication, but at the same time and within the time frame established with the mandate, how to cope with this. This is a major issue to be kept in mind by planners planning both on strategical level and operational level when they are dealing with the mission implementation plan on mission level. They have to keep this in mind, and this is a major problem to be faced. Not an issue, really, sometimes really a problem. Cultural awareness. Okay? When planning, advising activities, we must bear in mind the specifics of the country, of the culture of the country, of the people we are dealing with. Okay? Planning on operational level, or in a strategical level, establishing a benchmarking annex for an OPLAN with a very short time frame, which pushes people to perform, for an example, to perform advice activities in Afghanistan on a Friday. It's not really very smart. Okay? And we must be, of course, aware of this kind of aspects. But respect for the local culture, for the local values, but never, never compromising the core fundamental rights. Okay? And in the planning documents, this must be completely clear and completely met. Coordination with actors present in the host country. Planners have to identify the organization, the people who are already working in these specific aspects in the host country. Okay? And I mean military components, NGOs, other international organizations, missions, etc., etc. Mainly, why? Because we have to coordinate. And this must be clear in the planning documents. And more than generating synergies, and this is from my experience, both on strategical level and on operational level, it's not in the slide, but it's the issue of coherence, okay? Because in a certain moment, our local counterparts have one organization performing advising tasks, adding to a certain goal, and they have another international actor in the field performing advising activities, using other methodology, and willing to achieve another goals. And sometimes they found themselves within a lack of coherence of the international action in the country. Okay? And of course, this must be avoided. And when planning, planners have to think really deep on these kind of issues. And the actors in the field, the staff we deploy to the field, they must be also aware of this, and this must also be reflected on the planning documents on operational level. An issue of coherence of the action of the international actors present in the field. Identification of material needs from the side of our local counterparts. Yes, relevant, and providing some capacity building for them, it's relevant, and of course, it's a strong facilitator for advice-driving activities. But planners have to think that, including the budgeting perspective, this must be included already in the planning documents. Okay? This implies expenditure, and if it is not starting on strategic level in the planning documents, they will not find money available to use this as facilitator, this providing materials to to the organizations we are advising, they will not find a way to provide, to use this tool as facilitator. And of course, it must be clear on the mind of everyone performing these advising tasks, and when providing the local counterparts with some materials, some tools, physical tools, they must not be seen, they must not take the suit of a materials provider, okay? I give some examples: founding of seminars, printing of booklets, leaflets, team building activities, etc., etc., but not, I need computers and blah, 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 and so on, so as you know. And sometimes, as you know also, and from my experience, the computers don't finish in the organizations we are supporting, they finish in other places, as we know. And the horizontal approach of these key aspects in all planning documents. There must be a clear alignment of all, in all planning documents, both on strategical level and planning level, regarding meeting these key aspects identified. Okay? Coherence. I'm talking about the CONOPS, the OPLAN, and finally the Mission Implementation Plan. And we must not forget, and I'm introducing a little bit the topic. I'm not willing to jeopardize, but I'm introducing a little bit the topic of another speakers, and we must not forget that the planning documents are the basis for evaluation, reporting. The OPLAN has its benchmarking annex, and this is the tool where the contributors for the action we are performing, they will evaluate. This is the basis for the evaluation of our activity in the field. Never forget, advising is a continuum of involvement in a knowledge transfer process. In a perfect world, we start as drivers of this process. In a certain moments, we become passengers, and the end state, okay, that we must never forget to establish, eventually we are out of the car. That's the idea. That's the goal. Be out, and they are self-sustainable to keep rule of law, order in their countries. I finished my presentation. Thank you. Thank you very much.
We have about 10 minutes around of questions, or you know, the Colonel is even inviting pushback, so or discussions on these. So please raise your hands and identify yourself when you ask a question. And we have enough time right now to take one at a time. So.
Thank you very much. That was really interesting. I think it gave a broad overview. So I have sort of one comment, maybe to add to that, and also then a question as well on one of the aspects that you mentioned. So first of all, just on the comment, and you know, building on what you were saying, it's also very important that on the national ownership side, which again, you know, really important. You put that was up front. That's so important. But I think it's really important as well to differentiate between what national counterparts want and what they need. And you know, there is a sort of reality of elite capture of decision making within countries, and we know that sustainable reform is based on, you know, principles of inclusivity and you know, oriented towards accountable service provision to all elements of the population, particularly the most vulnerable groups as well. So I think you know, I think it builds on what you're saying there, just maybe to emphasize that point. And then the question I had, again, I liked this element you raised about host country absorption capacity. Very, very true, and the coherence element. And you know, I think the challenge, though, is, of course, you know, as you mentioned yourself, you know, most environments have a cacophony of international assistance that's rushed in there to come to the rescue. And most people are actually indeed very happy to have their advising activities aligned to that absorption capacity, as long as it's by others. I mean, as long as it doesn't affect their own engagements. So the question, I mean, just a very quick example on that, in Guinea-Bissau, when they were doing their modernisation of the security and defence section, Natasha, you'll remember this. They had a technical group that was answerable to the steering committee, and the lead of that was excellent. I mean, a really strong capacity within that individual that was totally and utterly decimated by being the one point of contact that everybody went to, and of course there was no coherence of that, of that. Yeah, so everyone needed to tick their boxes to report back to their capitals. So I guess that is the how can you actually preempt that in the planning phase? And I mean, it's great if we I think we need to be doing that upstream, but we've been struggling with this for a long time. How can you actually genuinely have that sort of division when it comes to dealing with the one interlocutor that in theory can get things done? Thank you.
Thank you very much for your question. We are really among experts on this issue. Very interesting question. Teamwork. Picking people very well aware of the reality of the host country and merging their knowledge and their capabilities with experienced senior planners, it's the solution to obtain a good planning product. The specifics of the host country managed with people used to plan and used to experiment the consequences of the inputs they gave through their planning is the answer for your question. Teamwork. And I did it. When we planned UMM Georgia in a rush back in the summer 2008, under huge French political pressure to put boots on ground in Georgia, we felt that. And we are lucky. We even followed the fast track. We skipped the CONOPS and we came directly from the CMC, the crisis management concept. I'm talking EU, okay, between brackets. It's my main background. And we went directly to the Oplan. Fortunately, and some people that we work along. This is the answer to your question, and to achieve the best results to afterwards in the ground. Okay, a general situation based on copy paste from open sources, it's not enough. Period. Regarding the first aspect, I think that sentence I used in this slide reflects perfectly the good idea regarding the ownership of the process by the local counterparts. We start as drivers, and then our goal is to become passengers in the process, and finally, ends out of the process, they achieve a self-sustainability situation. Thank you.
So you described a lot of good topics which are really relevant, and but that leads me at least to one question. It's a mandate also of NATO in this orbit. So we might be leading our thinking that Afghanistan right now, the mission where we're controlling things, where we're organizing things, having a HQ there, which is at least running these planning in our mind. But that's not relevant all over. So if I go to Africa or other regions, at least we do not have these mandate. We do not have at least these common planning. We do have single nations mostly having their own intent, running things. So how to bring things there together? So one step, how to bring things together, how to bring these planning together and having a coherent, at least, thinking and engagement with these host country there. I think that's a key challenge. So are we doing things right, or are just doing things in the right way? Or are we doing the right things? And how to get there?
Thank you for your question. Thank you very much. On planning on a strategical level, people must be really very well informed on the other actors who are in the theater of the operations, okay? And by other hands, they have really to push, but the main work regarding this is from the side of the people in the ground. Who is doing what, and who is present, okay? And having dialogue capacity. These kinds of specifics, which I consider very relevant for the good action of a mission in the field, of course, they are never clear in the mandate. The mandate gives you, as we know, gives you the general time frame and gives you the money and to perform the job. Okay? It's on the field, mainly on the field, and using dialogue capability with other international counterparts, try to find synergies among them, and as I said, a coherent action. This is the most important for me. It's not easy. Sometimes it's not easy. I know that sometimes we have even organizations competing among them in the field, okay? But this is not the good approach. And in my opinion, this is serious. Because doing things this way, we are really spoiling the money of the contributor countries who are supporting these actions in the field, okay? Competing and not talking with each other and not trying to achieve coherence on the action performed in the field. That's my contribution.
I'm interested in how you build resilience to waning political will among these programs. So how do we all accept that these have to be enduring programs that are there for as long as it takes for capacity of the partner force to be built up, but how do you ensure that when you go back to policymakers and you say this isn't working, we need more resources or we need different resources, how can you speak truth to power when there's so much waning interest across the world around these different operations?
Thank you. Quite challenging question because it's has some politics behind, and I'm not a politician. Look, when decision is done to perform an action in a crisis management action in a certain country, in a certain area, we are talking about a commitment took by several countries. And it's the heart of the people delivering them the documents. And speaking again, EU, okay? Collecting the advices from the COREPER, from the CIVCOM, to create a solid basis which allow, after a strategic review of the action performed in the field, to continue the action if really we are facing the need for that. This is the way to do it. It will be not with non-experienced people on drafting these complex documents that will achieve this, because the things must be there, sometimes in a discreet way, but when we take the countries on adopting this commitment among them, okay, we can achieve the basis. If we, in the future, we will need to continue our action, we have already a basis with a good strategic review to renew a mandate and to continue to perform the work. It's the practical way to achieve that, in my opinion.
Okay, we have time for one more contribution question. Natasha? Anyone else that has a pressing question?
Okay. Yeah, I think the last question, is this on? Yeah. The last question raised is critical because we often speak and focus on political will on the side of the host nation and the beneficiary of our efforts. In the work that I've done looking at donor commitments and donor programming in support of security sector reform, you see that that resilience of the political will on the part of the donor, on the part of the deploying institutions, sending advisors, supporting programming is an issue. And maybe remembering what Nadia was suggesting to us earlier on how advising can be a capability applied across across the spectrum, focusing on prevention could be one way of trying to focus the minds that it's worth investing in that part of the work early on, because it is a lot cheaper than trying to pick up the pieces afterwards. Might be a way.
It was when approaching the challenge you did to me. My very first constraint, it was not jeopardizing the area for the other speakers. We will have speakers on recruitment and selection. I was delivering a little bit on my vision for planning of this kind of activities, both on strategical level and operational level. But my biggest concern regarding the performing of these activities, it's the quality of the staff employed in this kind of activities. Okay? I'm not willing to jeopardize the areas of these ones, but I have to leave to you this message. The contributing states sometimes, and I'm not criticizing the staff themselves, and I'm not criticizing nobody, neither. It's a reality we face. We have to cope with staff not suitable for the job to be done. And this is a workshop. And I leave a challenge, an idea here. Why we do not establish an SQF, a sectorial qualifications framework, on a competency-based model for advisors, for international advisors. It's not easy. We have to establish scientific and accurate instruments to obtain the information. We will have to analyze the data. And it's complicated because it's international. It's not a national framework. It's an international framework. But doing this and giving this guidance, okay, the framework for mission staffing, because we have advice-driven activities to perform, the framework for the staff to be employed is this one. Send us staff complying with these requirements. Okay? This is the challenge I launch in this. I'm launching in this workshop because it's common to hear human resources are the most important part of an organization. I'm not just saying. I strongly believe on this. And if we have quality and suitable human resources in our missions, we achieve faster efficiency and we start delivery quickly something useful for our counterparts. It's my final message, and yes, advising organizations, it's also a transfer of knowledge process, and yes, this turn is really the last one.
All right.
Thank you very much.